Hello everybody, and welcome to our video on the English Reformation. Today's left side has two parts. The first part, make a timeline of any 10 events from the video. There's more than 10 years, so you'll find plenty. The second part, make 4 cause and effects of things that happened from the video. The password for today is tea time, so write it down there wherever you can. So, the Reformation, hold on, my daughters won't stop talking. Back to the Reformation. So the Reformation in England is different than the rest of the Reformation that we learned about before. It was about politics, not so much about religion. It wasn't about things like faith, salvation, indulgences. It was all about power. You see, King Henry, who was born, he got to the throne in 1509 at the age of 17, wanted to divorce Catherine of Aragon, which is basically Spain. It was a political marriage. He couldn't do that. The Pope said, no, Spain is a very Catholic country, and we don't want to make them mad. Henry did not like being told what to do, and there's some other things that were an issue here. So he did not like being told by the Pope that he can't have a divorce or an annulment. So basically, England, as a result, broke away from papal rule. In 1534, the Act of Supremacy was passed by Parliament, and King Henry was now the supreme head of the new Church of England, which is also known as the Anglican Church. In other words, they were no longer had to answer to the Pope. His reasoning for the divorce wasn't because he was in love with Anne, which was the case, but because he said his wife Catherine, who was first married to his brother Arthur, who died, it broke biblical teachings from Leviticus. He went to church like 5 times a day when he was king. So basically, once this act happens, Henry dissolves all the monasteries, which means the church in England had about 1/5 to 1/3 of all the land. And now that was sold to people who made money off of it. Nothing really changed in the Church of England except that they didn't have to listen to the Pope, right? The Mass was still very similar. Their beliefs, the ideology was very similar. It was all just a matter of who was in charge of this. Now, this meant that the Anglican Church, or the Church of England, was pretty similar to the Catholic Church. This is not a timeline. This is just a spectrum of the Anabaptists were the most different from the Catholic Church, even though it was also a form of Christianity, whereas Lutherans were, I guess, somewhere in the middle at this point. Now, of course, today there's many more different forms of Protestantism. Now, King Henry, this Tudor king, is known for many things, lots of movies and books about him, mostly because of his many wives. So he first divorced Catherine, though she never considered herself divorced, and eventually got beheaded. His next wife, Jane Seymour, died. He then divorced another queen. He had Catherine Howard beheaded, and then Catherine Parr, who outlived Henry. Well, Henry actually died in 1547, which left his 9-year-old son, Edward, king. Edward was a pretty sick child. They didn't even think he'd last very long. But he did make some more changes. He made the Church of England more Protestant-like. He dismantled images in the Church of England, so there was no more stained glass, shrines, statues, chalices, things like that. He was the first English monarch to actually be raised as a Protestant. Now, a lot of people didn't like all these rapid changes, that now the church was becoming so much more Protestant-like. So what does change that's very quick and rapid almost always lead to? Think about it. Do you think most people like rapid change? No, right? It led to a lot of opposition. So now when he dies, his half-sister Mary becomes queen. Now Mary was the daughter of Henry and his first wife Catherine. So she was raised Catholic and wasn't too happy of the way her father treated her mother. And she was determined to produce an heir, which didn't really happen, in an effort to return the country to Catholicism and to try to get herself in good graces with the Pope. Now, Mary, in an effort to trying to make it more Catholic again, some people liked this, but some people didn't. And some of the people that remained Protestant, she would penalize. And some of them were burnt at the stake. And you may have heard of the phrase, Bloody Mary, right? That's where she got her nickname from. Mary denounced the Act of Supremacy in 1553. Let's see. Talking about the Renaissance, her mother, Catherine, was a humanist, so she learned to read Latin and all these languages by a young age of 9. This persecution was known as the Marian persecutions. Marian, Mary, right? 283, some say 284, 280 some odd Protestants burned at the stake. A lot of people said, whoa, if this is what Catholics do, they burn our people at the stake, then we don't want to be Catholic, we want to be Protestant. In all actuality, her half-sister Elizabeth had more Catholics killed than she had Protestants killed, but that's another story. Anyway, once Mary dies in 1558, her half-sister Elizabeth, the very famous Queen Elizabeth, becomes queen, and England at this point would forever remain a reformed nation, meaning it would no longer ever again be considered a Catholic nation. We'll learn more about Elizabeth later, but the Pope refused to ever recognize her as a queen. They consider her illegitimate and because of her Protestant roots. 1 second, Colton. Now I have a bonus for you. If you're having trouble with cause and effects, you want to pause this. These are some of my other classes prior years what they came up with. Oh, isn't that nice of me? All right, see you next class.